Check this out. Tom Savage press conference last night. Nobody showed up. Where were you people? Check this out. Adam Schefter report that Crabtree taped his chain to his own flesh, knowing he was facing Talib. That is how you report, people. You need to see the torn chest hair to prove it. Let's go around the horn.
See, he talked to the media later.
It's Around the Horn, the show of competitive banter. Here's Tony Reale.
2 games each for Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree. Will start there. In the history of NFL suspensions, 2 games is among the longest for on-field infractions. Jack Del Rio tweeting, it was hard to understand the reasoning based on the most recent ruling with A.J. Green and Jalen Ramsey getting no games. But that kind of avoids the chain history between Talib and Crabtree and the aforementioned chest hair investigation that Adam Schefter deserves a Pulitzer for. NFL says it's 2 games to get the players' attention. Pablo Torre, we'll start with you. Does this have your attention or does it have your curiosity?
It has my curiosity because this feels excessive according to the history of how these things are punished. Since 1920, according to the database Football Zebras, which is comprehensive on this stuff, only 7 instances have triggered multi-game suspensions. And the other ones on that list tend to be stomps and illegal hits, defenseless players, really serious stuff. And so the NFL does want to stomp this kind of behavior out, so to speak. But what I worry about is that they don't fully appreciate how fun this story is. Like, I understand you want to eradicate these feuds, these blood feuds from the face of the planet, but some of the stuff I praise the NBA for instance, the soap opera, the blood feuding, this is kind of hilarious and amazing in its own way, and I just hope the league office realizes this is kind of good for business in its own weird way.
KB, do you share Pablo's own weird opinion that this is good for business?
I don't know that it's good for business, and I don't know it's good for the NFL to police it like they did. I mean, as we said the other day, this is, and Pablo just alluded to, this is just a feud between 2 guys, right? They did this before this season. They're not going to meet again. It had no impact on that game. It shouldn't have any impact on any games going forward, but it will now because...
You don't think it had an impact on the game that 2 starting players were out for the remaining 50 minutes?
No, because, I mean, it's 2 bad teams playing each other. I mean, that's what it came down to. And so, to me, if the commissioner really wants to get to the bottom of this and stamp it out, then what he ought to do is bring these 2 guys in this week on their off day, sit them down in his office, and read them the riot act. I don't understand why you have to suspend them for 2 games. And I also know that there are people who have studied this thing, maybe even a little bit more than the Football Zebras, people like the renowned, the late sociologist Herbert Simons out at Berkeley, who looked at these things and how leagues try to control the behavior of black athletes in particular. And all of those instances you mentioned since 1920 of guys being suspended for multiple games are of black athletes. Don't see that in other sports like hockey. Don't see that in baseball. In fact, Bill Plaschke wrote a brilliant column about it a few years ago when a Diamondbacks-Dodgers brawl broke out, and the Dodgers front office tried to dismiss it as being just part of the history of the game. It's not. It shouldn't be in any sport, but don't just come down on these guys.
A lot of food for thought there from Professor Blackistone. Tim Calishaw, you have a view of it?
Yeah, I do. First, I want to, as far as Pablo goes, this is not good for business, so I would dock him a point for that if you like.
Well, let's see if you can prove it.
You're not hosting.
As far as what KB is saying, I agree with part of it, but, I mean, I think the stupidity of the players involved is what gets them this penalty. You can say the Raiders are a bad team, and they're a very disappointing team. They're also a game out of first, so it's dumb for Crabtree to get himself kicked out of that game, and now he's suspended for 2 more. I think a 1-game suspension is probably more appropriate, given that we saw something similar with A.J. Green and Jalen Ramsey, and they get 0. So I don't know how you go from 0 to 2 that quickly. But the fact that it's carried over from last year and it's about a chain, they're just trying to say, get this silliness out of the league.
Bill Plaschke.
I think it was very excessive because it wasn't about the fight. To me, it was about the visuals of the fight. It was about the fact that it's almost like these players are being penalized because the owners are mad that players take a knee during the national anthem. They're mad at the decreased TV ratings. They're mad at how the public is looking at the league. The ratings are down, and I think they're transposing this and saying it's all kind of conflating it to be the same thing. Is that this is another example? The fans think these players are reckless, they're violent. The fact that the helmet was off off of Crabtree, I think made it even worse. It's like, this is a real human being out here fighting. Totally excessive, but totally because of the way it looked and because of the league's problems, not because of the fight itself.
Does anybody else think there's something to what Plaschke's saying here, that the league is transposing and conflating all the other not so great headlines of their season onto this fight?
Yeah, I think so.
Kevin, go ahead, please.
I think so, just because of the fact that you're talking about roughly 1,700 players in the NFL, and all the games that happened the other day, these are the two guys that got into a fight. Two guys. That's it. And we have all of this.
It did stream out to the sideline, and then there were more guys involved. 3 were ejected in the game. I think they potentially could have ejected more. At one point, it was Crabtree versus the entire team of the Broncos. Go ahead, Pablo, after the horn, please.
And I would add that discipline can resemble control, even if those are not the same things. And what I would add to the absurdity and the fun of this is there is a tape sponsorship out there for one of these two men. It is a race now to find out who gets that first.
Kalisha, you want a real quick
what Pablo sees as fun, a lot of us just see as really stupid that a man taped his chain to his chest.
That's amazing, Tim. That is amazing.
That's not amazing.
What's amazing is one panelist had a sociologist as his background research, and another had football zebras as his background research. That is amazing.
Shout out to the zebras.
Both deserve points. We'll move on. Ravens 23, Texans 16. If the season ended today, Baltimore would be in the playoffs. Wild card 2 have a tiebreaker over Buffalo. Kevin, Ravens look like a playoff team to you last night?
No, because you know what? They beat another team without a quarterback. Do you know that their 6 wins this year have come against quarterbacks with an average rate QBR of 35.8? 35.8, which oddly enough is slightly better than Joe Flacco's QBR this year. But it just gives you an idea of where they're at as a team right now. Their defense obviously is lights out and they shut down everybody. But I just don't know if that offense can.
So that's a no from Blackstone. Let's work our way west here. Kalisha, how about you? Playoff team
I just think the Baltimore Ravens look a lot like the Baltimore Ravens. They're really good on defense, they're great on special teams, and they're incompetent on offense. A couple of weeks ago, Alex Collins had a 100-yard rushing game, and I thought, well, they're going to find something here and go to that. They haven't been able to sustain that. Flacco can't find any of his receivers, so the offense is terrible. They will make the playoffs as a wild card team, but they'll go on the road and they'll be done because they can't score.
Blaschke, did you see a playoff team last night?
Well, this defense is better, actually, than the one that won the Super Bowl last time. So you can say that. However, the offense is in the last 15 years, nobody's finished last in the league in passing yards and made the playoffs in 15 years. They're last in the league in passing yards. Their own fans were booing them in the fourth quarter. I think, again, the defense is great, but at some point, they're going to fall behind and they have to come back and win.
You say the defense isn't just great. You say it's better than the defense that won the Super Bowl.
But the offense is so much worse.
Does anybody believe that? Let's start with that one. Is this better than the defense that had Ed Reed, Ray Lewis? Is it a better? Kalisha, you can answer that.
Yes, it is, because actually that defense was okay. That was nothing like the 2000 defense that was one of the greatest of all time. They had some good players, but they're probably better now. Blaschke was right on that one.
They're number 2 in points allowed right now, which I think is right up there with that best ever defense.
And now Pablo Torre.
Yeah, I mean, to Plaschke's defense, the Ravens lead the league in takeaways, and the Ravens, when I shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. But when they hold the opponent, or when they score, rather, 20 or more points, the team is 4-1. They're 2-4 when the offense can't reach that 20-point mark. And a lot of the problem here is, of course, Joe Flacco. Since signing that massive deal, since winning the Super Bowl in 2012, he is dead last in the league in touchdown to interception ratio. He is dead last in the league right now in a bunch of categories, like yards per attempt, number 31 in passer rating. He's just an incompetent quarterback in a year of great quarterback incompetence. So that defense is holding its weight. It's just the offense is truly terrible.
Quarterbacking incompetence around the league. Maybe Sam Cook. Maybe Mohamed Sanu Jr. should be playing quarterback in this league. These guys have perfect ratings in their career when they're throwing the ball. Highlight of last night's game for me was nobody showing up to Tom Savage's press conference. So he left. Marshawn Lynch should demand all members of the media get fired.
Tony, he talked again. He talked in the locker room later to everybody.
Now settle down, Bill. I'm just kidding here. But you guys get worked up when they don't show up. Now you guys don't show up. Speaking of press conferences, Chuck Pagano's yesterday.
You ever see the movie Groundhog Day? What do you guys do? You spend so much time on Twitter, you're not enjoying the better things in life.
Tim, is Pagano trying to tell us anything here?
Yes, he is. And if you watch the whole thing, if Pablo wants to see something fun going on in the NFL, watch the entire press conference. He goes off on the whole rant about Groundhog Day, and then the thing about hurricanes coming up the east. It's all very, it makes a lot of sense. Everybody's panicking because they lose these games. Really? Yes. They lose these games in the second half. Everybody knows these storms are coming. They got to find a nor'easter to stop the storm and keep it from doing damage. I thought it was...
Did you call out Pablo? Pablo, you can respond right now.
I loved this. This is the most I loved Chuck Pagano in his entire tenure. But, Tim, this is defined by the fact that the dude looks and sounds like he just had one of Woody Page's legalized edibles. Like, this is one of those things where his insanity and absurdity is what's glorious about this. And if there is brilliance here, it is the fact that he chose Groundhog Day to describe a situation that really is so perfect when describing the press conference as a concept, right? Every press conference in the NFL is the same, except for this one, in which a guy is reliving the same cycle over and over again out loud, which is just a glorious thing to behold.
I brought this up as a joke. I didn't think we were getting a senior thesis at a Pablo Torre or Kevin.
I have sociologists on my side,
Bill,
too.
Do you have anything on Chuck Pagano's press conference?
First, I thought it was brilliant the fact that he was singing at the start of the press conference a Sonny and Cher song that was on the radio in Groundhog Day. All right, so Pablo's right. That's absolute brilliance. However, it also looks like he hadn't slept in about 3 days, and he looks like a guy who has... who has survived cancer and realizes there's things a lot more important in life than a job, and also a guy that may know his job is probably going to end in a couple of weeks. That's what it looks like to me.
KB?
Yeah, absolutely. The wind that's brewing out there that he's predicting is going to blow him out of a job as head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. It's kind of like the joke about the light at the end of the tunnel. It's actually a train coming at you. But good for him to find some way to have some levity with it and to make a normal press conference entertaining for the rest of us.
I got that first step, guys. It's a doozy. We're going to take a break right here. Buy or sell in 2 minutes.
Snickers satisfies.
Nuggets Jazz at 10, tonight on ESPN.
Buy or sell.
Let's start with the Memphis Grizzlies firing David Fizdale.
Take that for data.
They would take that for data tributes all over the internet last night. LeBron wondered aloud if Memphis made Fizdale the fall guy. Fizdale used to be an assistant to the Miami Heat. That's their history. 8 straight losses for Memphis. Benching of Gasol on Sunday. Jeff Calkins' commercial appeal. He's a great man, but he's not a fall guy. He's a guy who couldn't find a way to get along with his best player. Talking about Gasol. Bill, what are you buying? What are you selling from all the blame game?
Jeff Calkins is a great man, but no, Fizdale was a fall guy. He'd been there 1 year. He made the playoffs during that season. This year, Mike Conley gets hurt. They're 0-7 without Conley. He was fired because he couldn't get along with Marc Gasol, and Marc Gasol shooting less than 40% during this recent skid. It makes no sense to me.
Tim Kalishaw?
Yeah, I wonder how many teams have actually beaten Golden State and Houston this year. Memphis did it the first week of the season, back when they were fairly healthy. Now that they're not, things are falling apart. But, hey, if you don't have a good relationship with your best player or the best current player, active player, the player's going to win that fight. And if it gets to that point, that's what happens. And that's what happened in Memphis.
KB?
Yeah, but he shouldn't be winning this fight. And you know what? I guess now we can label Marc Gasol a coach killer because this is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. Conley is the best player on that team, the most important player on that team at point guard. That's why they gave him all that money. And while he's out, there's no one to stir that drink. And that's the problem with that team.
Pablo Torre.
But Coach Killer is a funny label to me because the front office and the ownership still has to do the actual act of firing the guy. And there is a clear incentive. If you're this team, this franchise, and you built a roster that's flawed, Mike Conley getting hurt all the time, Marc Gasol being past his prime, there is incentive for them to distract from the fact that they are responsible for these players who aren't going to get them anywhere close to where they want to go.
Right. The Conley deal is $150 million. He's not even halfway through that yet. Gasol's over 30 now, and his numbers are going down. But LeBron's comments there about the fall guy. He had a busy night last night. He was rallying for his former assistant coach in Miami, and he had 30, 13, and 6 in the master pupil game versus Ben Simmons, which is also the present-future game versus the Sixers. And it was also the long walk unspoiled game. How is that not in travel in the NBA? Tim, what's your takeaway from it all?
My takeaway is trying to get that last image out of my head. And this was LeBron versus Simmons, at least in LeBron's mind. And I think over the course of a long 82-game, sometimes boring season, he uses things to fuel him. And there'd been talk about Ben Simmons. So, hey, I'll go out and I'll score the first 9 points and 22 at halftime and put this kid away.
But I think what's been fueling LeBron is the fact that we've been talking about how poorly the Cleveland Cavaliers have been playing, how they haven't been gelling, how they really miss Isaiah out there, how they can't score, how they can't stop anybody. Now they're on a winning streak. And guess what? Jay Crowder stepped up last night guarding Ben Simmons. That's what he was brought in there to do.
Corey.
Well, on the one hand, LeBron in year 15 is in some ways better than year 14, 13, 12, which is truly, truly absurd. But the defense here, I think, is an even bigger story. 40% from beyond the arc opponents were shooting against the Cavs in the first dozen games. Last 8, 30%, and the Sixers were 3 of 28 from 3 last night, which is key to winning, of course, in the modern NBA.
I love it. Of all the stats and flash and everything, the NBA is still a game of human beings. And this, to me, was Jay Crowder trying to impress his new teammate, LeBron. Crowder's still new there. He thinks LeBron wants his honor to be defended. He turned it up against the kid. That was a story.
Simmons sprained ankle late in the game. X-rays negative today. Philly can breathe.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Buy or sell 3. Tennessee interviewing Mike Gundy today. They made a play for him 5 years ago. Got Gundy a nice raise at Oklahoma State. This time, incredible pressure on Tennessee to hire a coach. KB, you buy this choice for Tennessee or for Gundy?
But wait a second. Tennessee just chased away, at least its fan base, Greg Schiano, because of his relationship in the Sandusky case back at Penn State. This is a school that just went through a sexual assault settlement for several $1 million just the past year. And now maybe they've forgotten, but people should know that Gundy also, when he was at Oklahoma State, brought in a kid whose scholarship had rescinded at Texas because he had been arrested for sexual assault of a 12-year-old. So how does this wash? I don't understand it.
Pablo Torre?
Well, I think it washes because Gundy is a way better coach than Greg Schiano. And you're very correct on this, KB. If zero tolerance for this specific issue, the defense of children, is the motive that we've heard in the last couple days, then Mike Gundy extending this scholarship when Texas wouldn't, and then standing by the player, playing him into November until days before he pled guilty and was ultimately sent to prison, that's probably going to show up on the record, or at the very least it should if we're being consistent.
You guys, for more specifics, are talking about Chris Collins, a linebacker for Oklahoma State in the 2007 season, who did plead guilty to sexual assault of a 12-year-old. Bill Plaschke.
Yeah, if this flirtation continues with Gundy, we'll be hearing a lot more about Chris Collins in the coming days. I don't think he's going to take the job. I don't think he wants a job. He's been at Oklahoma State 18 years, 13 as a coach. He has a huge budget. He has a lifetime contract. He can win a national title there. I don't see him even want to get into this mess.
Tim Calishaw.
I think he's had some reasons to want to leave. I don't know if he has as many reasons now. And I just don't know if there's been enough time that this case that we're talking about can be not brushed aside, but we got to remember how differently we viewed things and how differently administrations handled things. Even when Bob Stoops left last year, he said the Joe Mixon penalty, when it happened, seemed right. But then after the Ray Rice tape, it didn't seem like enough. The world has changed drastically, as we know, in 10 years since then. And maybe Gundy can offer up that if this comes up in the discussion, which I'm sure it will.
Thanks for your thoughts on that. Kevin Blackistone, Pablo Torre showdown. Showdown 1 is retweet trolling Nick Saban. It's what Lane Kiffin did yesterday. The initial tweet wasn't exactly accurate when it came to Saban's quote. The rat poison was provided by Kiffin, and that's an old line by Saban. So, KB, fair or foul?
Well, I guess it's a little fair and a little bit foul. You know, if you're going to do this on Twitter, you know, you try to be accurate all of the time. But the one thing I would say is, at least he did win his conference championship this year, right? He won the Conference USA.
KB, it is fair. Lane Kiffin is at Florida Atlantic, and we are talking about him as much as we ever have recently. The dude is out here scrapping for memes. Accuracy is beside the point. He just wants to be in the conversation, and he clearly is.
Deal with it. Boy, Pablo Torre. Showdown 2, Niners undecided about their starting quarterback this upcoming Sunday. Jimmy Garoppolo or C.J. Beathard? Who is your QB1, Pablo?
The 49ers are 1-10. Fans are desperate for any breadcrumb. If you're not going to start Garoppolo now just to appease them, why not?
And they got more than a breadcrumb last weekend. They got a half a loaf because Garoppolo came in relief and threw a touchdown. So let's have fun. Take the bubble wrap off. Is the Shanahan playbook that
very
difficult?
impressed. You stand by your conviction, Blackistone, and arguing the same thing Pablo did right before you. But I liked it better the first time I heard it. We'll give it FaceTime, Pablo Estoril.
Many people are applauding a new statue of Cristiano Ronaldo in Madrid. Real Madrid has this new museum, and they built a statue for him, and it's very handsome, and that's fine. But they're praising it by insulting the old statue. And as the only Around the Horn panelist to visit Cristiano Ronaldo's airport, Cristiano Ronaldo International Airport, on the island of Madeira, I can tell you that this was absolutely the best depiction we could imagine. There was a line behind me to take photos with that statue, for the record. So there's capitalism as well here, besides art.
You're a little quick at having that photo ready for your FaceTime there, Pablo.